If you're watching this video, I'm sure you're familiar with the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. In short, it's a collection of Final Fantasy VII content that expands on its universe and characters. Most people know about it for Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, and of course, the movie, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children.
I think she wants you to.
However, there is tons of content that I've found most fans of 7 just haven't experienced. This is nearly all to blame on accessibility. Before Crisis is a mini 2D side-scrolling RPG consisting of 24 episodes, or chapters. The game takes place before and during the events of Crisis Core and follows the Turks during that time period. Sounds pretty cool, right? You might be thinking, I should play this, how come I haven't looked into that yet? Surprise, idiot, you can't. Before Crisis was released exclusively in Japan on specific cell phones only accessible through a primitive subscription service in 2004 and again in 2007. There is virtually no preservation of this title because it is for literal flip phones, except for a fan recreation and translation made with RPG Maker. So, safe to say, for whatever bizarre reason, Square did not think to bring all compilation content to the West and certainly didn't make a great effort in terms of accessibility, which is why plenty of hardcore 7 fans may be missing out on some great stuff. The content I'm highlighting today isn't before Crisis. Instead, I'd like to talk about Final Fantasy VII Anime content, a genre that is bizarrely barely explored for the franchise. These two titles are Final Fantasy VII The Last Order and Final Fantasy VII Episode Denzel, On the Way to a Smile. You most likely haven't heard of these, and it's certainly not your fault. Both of these have seen very limited release in North America, with The Last Order being bundled in with Advent Children's limited edition collector's set, and On the Way to a Smile only being included with Advent Children Complete Edition. These two OVAs are not available on a single release. Thank you, Square. This, frankly, is ridiculous, as The Last Order serves as a great teaser for Crisis Core even though it does change a few beats, but the real crime is Episode Denzel seeing one single release, considering the incredibly important backstory it provides to, the character Denzel that shows up out of nowhere in Advent Children and is essentially Tifa and Cloud's adopted child. Only made worse when you consider how much more confusing Denzel's entire character existing is if you did not watch the extended cut of Advent Children, which released 3 entire years after the original cut of the film. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's get into Final Fantasy VII The Last Order. The Last Order begins 5 years after the Nibelheim incident, when Zack is helping a Mako-poisoned Cloud escape Shinra troopers in pursuit of them following their escape from being experimented on by Hojo. We get a scene of Sung giving the order for the capture of Zack and Cloud before flashing back to the day of the Nibelheim incident. We see a brief scene of Sephiroth during his rage before we cut to Tifa looking for her father, before chasing after Sephiroth. Flashing back to the current time, we see Zack taking on some Shinra soldiers in a brilliant fight scene, before flashing back to Nibelheim. The village elder informs Zack that Tifa went after Sephiroth. Zack instructs Shinra trooper Cloud to stay with the elder and runs off to go help Tifa. Back in the current time, the Turks are trying to get Zack to surrender, promising his life in exchange. Zack doesn't bite and runs in pursuit of his and Cloud's freedom. Jumping to Nibelheim again, Tifa finds her father's corpse outside the Mako reactor, impaled by Masamune. He tells Tifa to run, just before he dies, and Tifa ignores his advice, taking Sephiroth's sword and going towards the reactor. Sephiroth doesn't take kindly to Tifa's attempted attack and slices her before heading toward Genova. In the present, Zack is still beating trooper ass and continues to run away with Cloud, now on a motorbike. Sung gives the order to guard the perimeter of Midgar and lets the boys drive off. Back in the past, Zack wakes up an unconscious Tifa. Tifa laments the situation that led her here and proclaims her hatred of Shinra and Soldier. Zack heads towards Sephiroth to set things right. Zack screams at Sephiroth while he ignores him and talks to Mommy Genova, spewing his Cetra supremacy beliefs. Zack tries to talk to Sephiroth again, but he simply just engages him in combat, ignoring him. He continues going off about his ideology while absolutely whooping Zack's ass until he is unconscious. Sephiroth goes back to Genova when a young Cloud stabs him with the Buster Sword, yelling that he idolized and trusted Sephiroth before going to check on Tifa. There's a cute scene with them in which she reminisces on their childhood promise that Cloud would always protect her. Sephiroth, now pissed, approaches Cloud with the head of Jenova in hand. Zack tells Cloud to finish him before we get the good old Sephiroth impaling Cloud moment that we're all frankly here for. Sephiroth, deeply wounded, jumps into the reactor, Jenova's head in hand. The whole gang passes out and the Turks come to capture them. Hojo requests the boys are brought to his lab and speaks to Sung about the cover-up plan they need for this entire situation. Back in current time, Sung is informed the boys are approaching Midgar and he heads out to ensure their capture. Cut to Zack and Cloud hitchhiking in a truck headed towards Midgar and what they believe to be freedom. Zack keeps the mood light, bantering with the truck driver and an unresponsive Cloud. Meanwhile, we overhear Shinra troopers make the decision to ignore Sung's instructions and move forward with executing the boys. Sung and the Turks are nearly at the perimeter, approaching fast, when all of a sudden, I think we all know what happens next. The Last Order is beautiful, visually stunning, utilizes variations of the Crisis Core soundtrack perfectly, and treats you to amazing vocal performances, with plenty of the game cast voicing their respective parts. It's incredible to see this complex stage and 7 lore presented in this way. The small amount of lore expansion we get here is mostly great stuff, and hell, I'm game any day for more Zack Fair content. We all know how I feel about Zack. However, The Last Order is not free of any issues. It's very short. Excluding credits, it barely pushes 20 minutes. It's a bizarre decision to me to go for this section of 7 and not give it a little more time that it desperately needs. I understand it was made to promote Crisis Core, so perhaps it didn't want to show too much, but it clearly needed to spend longer on just about everything it covers. Most blatantly, the beats featuring the Turks. What is shown is great. Sung is torn by the situation both Zack and Cloud have ended up in, and riddled with guilt by the Nibelheim incident and subsequent cover-up story. Yet, this is barely explored in the plot, and no, it's not further expanded on in Crisis Core. This is even more strange when you consider that the sections with the Turks are really the only sections with any real story expansion at all. The rest is cool fight scenes, beautifully animated, but we got a good helping of action figures smashing together in Advent Children already. Due to this shortcoming, The Last Order largely feels like spectacle over substance. I'd say it's absolutely worth watching since you can find it online pretty easily, but I wouldn't expect it to pop up in your mind the next time you're playing Crisis Core or 7, or now, Crisis Core Reunion, because this video took me so long to finish that it came out while I was writing it. Luckily, that's not much of an issue as The Last Order has been retconned by Square. The story is no longer canon. The Last Order was released as promotion for Crisis Core over 2 years before the game was finished, so there are a few glaring differences here. For one, Genesis is not present in the story at all. Technically, this doesn't really shake things up much, so we can move on to the big problems. The largest issues are the scenes between Cloud and Sephiroth. First up, there's a moment where the two are fighting and we see Cloud's eyes flash Mako green, seeming to insinuate that he has received Mako treatment already, which simply makes no sense at all considering he was never Soldier First Class in any iteration of 7 and obviously hasn't been experimented on by Hojo at this point. This interaction leads to the other big oopsie The Last Order made, which has Sephiroth throw himself into the Mako reactor, basically committing suicide instead of Cloud finishing the fight himself, iconically shown all the way back in the original release of 7. Both of these changes were corrected back to the original story in Crisis Core, and thank God because both of them suck. It completely takes away from Cloud being able to hold his own against Sephiroth, even all the way back when he was 16 years old, on top of him failing an incapacitated Zack who yells for him to finish off Sephiroth, all while removing iconic 7 imagery that is repeated in tons of other related media. Now don't get me wrong, The Last Order is not bad at all. It's pretty damn cool, and I really like the Sung moments here, but it does fall short. I'm not sure if there was some kind of rush to have it out with Advent Children. Perhaps the story of Crisis Core wasn't finalized yet, but hell, it needed a little bit more time in the oven, especially considering a lot of the choices made here are retconned back to the original intent with the release of Crisis Core. It is a treat to watch as it is undoubtedly gorgeous, but the bad here is a little too proportionally close to the good. As Square considers it a wash cemented by the release of 7 Remake, I would take it as a fun what if story, barring the Turks content, because what the hell, Square? Where was this in any other 7 media? This is canon to me, but I digress. You might as well give it a watch yourself if you're a hardcore 7 fan. Nowadays, it's very accessible, even right here on YouTube, and it clocks around 20 minutes, so why not? Take what you want from it and move on, because hell, by the end of 7 Remake, Crisis Core might not even be concrete canon as we know it. Treat yourself to some more Zack Fair, because we all need more of that king in our lives. Shameless self-promotion alert. Did you know? Nobody that watches my videos is subscribed to me. I would really like to make more videos and feel motivated to do it, so if you're enjoying this, please just click the button. Just please. Okay, back to the video. Before we get into episode Denzel, I need to tell you about this little subtitle right there. Final Fantasy VII On the Way to a Smile is a series of short stories penned by OG7 mastermind Kazushige Nojima. There are 8 total stories, each focusing on an individual 7 character and what was going on with them between the time of the end of 7 and the beginning of Advent Children. There are episodes for Denzel, Tifa, Barrett, Nanaki, better known as Red 13, Yuffie, and Rufus Shinra / the Turks, with the final entry being centered around Sephiroth and Aerith, who, wouldn't you know it, are currently dead. It follows them from within the livestream, hence the titles for this section being Livestream Black and Livestream White. If that sounds a little Nomura-y to you, take a look at Nojima's current work with Remake and tell me this dude hasn't always had just a little Nomura in him. These are all great and provide some much needed further context to the film Advent Children. So much so, in fact, that it's almost like portions of them should have been in the actual movie. Honestly, most of the events covered in these stories do follow under further readings for the 7 universe, but the crime really is episode Denzel not being present at all in the original cut of Advent Children. Considering how clearly insistent Nomura and Nojima were on including this little fluffy-haired bastard in Advent Children, it must be pretty good stuff, right? Well, lucky for us, it is the only story of On the Way to a Smile to be adapted into a visual medium, so let's find out. We begin 2 years after the events of Advent Children, seeing Denzel hanging out with famous 7 loser Johnny at his little outdoor bar, Johnny's Heaven. In walks Reeve, who is now a representative from the World Regenesis Organization, an army attempting to rebuild Midgar after the devastation left by the events of 7 and Advent Children. He begins an interview with Denzel to join the organization. Denzel is asked about his past, and so begins the grand backstory we're all waiting for. The story begins in Sector 7 with Denzel's father, Abel, panicking. He is an employee of Shinra and is attempting to get his family to safety before the Sector 7 attack by Shinra takes place. He has his assistant Arkham take Denzel to the family's new house in Sector 5, but is unable to convince his wife Chloe, who runs off to warn the others. He pursues her in an attempt to save both their lives. The attack takes place while Denzel and Arkham are safely in Sector 5, however Denzel's parents did not make it back in time. The first day after, Arkham leaves Denzel to attend to Shinra business, promising to check on him frequently. Wandering the streets, Denzel finds a Shinra helicopter toy left in the wreckage. In a moment of emotion, he throws the toy at a nearby house, breaking the window. The old woman who owns the house comes out angry at Denzel's badass act of vandalism. When confronted, Denzel begins to sob. The old lady calms down and takes a crying Denzel inside to try to console him. This old woman is named Ruby, and after learning Denzel's parents have died in Sector 7, she quickly sympathizes with him. The two form a strong bond, with Ruby treating him like a second son to her. Ruby talks to Denzel about Midgar's impending doom, the meteor Sephiroth has summoned looming in the sky. Ruby tells him she plans to stay right here no matter what, and asks what Denzel would like to do. The two agree to spend what time they have left together. Their happiness persists for some time, until the meteor begins to crash down. With the life stream surfacing to save the planet, it causes massive destruction. Ruby sacrifices herself to save Denzel, and he survives the event. Seemingly days later, a man named Gaskin happens upon Denzel. Gaskin is looking to collect people who did not evacuate during the meteor fall. Denzel agrees to go with Gaskin and his crew, but before they leave, Gaskin helps bury Ruby's body and she is laid to rest. We then enter a period in which Denzel and the other kids are working with Gaskin to build a new city, Edge, working as scavengers and collecting whatever they can. Eventually, Gaskin succumbs to geostigma and all the kids disband, once again leaving Denzel alone. Denzel refuses to move to Edge and wishes to live off the ruins of Midgar. His scavenging eventually leads him to Aerith's church, where he finds Cloud's bike empty and his cell phone. Denzel uses Cloud's phone to call Seventh Heaven and has a conversation with Tifa, sobbing about his situation until he collapses due to pain, discovering he has geostigma. Cloud finds his limp body and we cut back to the present. Denzel tells Reeve that from there he has been a part of Cloud, Tifa, and Marlene's life. The kindness he has experienced throughout his tough situation has inspired him to want to help people, and that's why he wishes to join the WRO. Reeve tells Denzel that he has decided that children cannot enlist in the WRO. Denzel is mad his time was wasted, but Reeve insists he came to the decision when he heard Denzel's story. As he leaves, he turns to thank Denzel for caring for his mother, revealing he is the son Ruby always spoke about to Denzel. Later, Johnny and Denzel have a heart-to-heart, with them reaching an agreement that to be strong, Denzel doesn't have to fight physically and simply has to keep doing what he's done his whole life, supporting people through rough times. Episode Denzel leaves me feeling a little conflicted. It's certainly a good story, but not exactly what I was quite looking for here, specifically from the character of Denzel. Don't get me wrong, Denzel absolutely needed a backstory, and it's done brilliantly, but if you consider where we began in Advent Children, in which Denzel is essentially Cloud and Tifa's orphan child, there is no large difference in how to read his character. It doesn't fill in the gap of Denzel connecting with Cloud, Tifa, and Marlene at all. It just gives us the scene in which Cloud happened upon him. Now, the problem here is that his role in regards to being a part of their lives is barely expanded upon in Advent Children, even in the extended edition. So by the end of everything Denzel related, he is Tifa and Cloud's adopted son with a sad backstory and nothing more. There was so much room to expand on this. I can't believe it was overlooked in a story where every character and their respective relationships with one another are almost exhaustingly fleshed out. No meaningful words or character building scenes are shared by the protagonists of Seven and their child. It's beyond weird and makes his inclusion in Advent Children retroactively even way more confusing. Hear me out. Give Marlene geostigma and the plot of Advent Children hits way better. Wow, a brilliantly written character that is like a daughter to Tifa and Cloud and has been present in the entire game series with plenty of amazing scenes featuring the whole cast. Nah, let's make up this random kid that goes through zero growth the entire time he's around except for his illness being cured. We did it, Square. Okay, enough complaining. What's good about episode Denzel? A lot. A lot of what we're shown here is really great. Exploring the effects of the events of Seven in real time is truly amazing and something that the series desperately needed from the perspective of a Midgar citizen. From the fear Avalanche strikes into people, to the effects of the Sector 7 pillar being Shinra'd, to the aftermath of the meteor fall, it was all something this universe needed to explore. Framing it through the lens of Denzel makes sense, as he was there and is a character Seven fans are familiar with. I really connected with the more dialed back perspective Denzel provides, being simply a victim of all of this. He's not right beside Cloud defeating Sephiroth, he's a child having his life completely torn apart, and as shown by Advent Children, his story is easily not unique. When it comes to Denzel, his relationship with Ruby is a very appreciated addition here, especially considering how it ties back into Reeve's backstory. It's a lovely dynamic and something I wish was given more time, but hey, what can you do in 25 minutes, right? His time as a scavenger makes a lot of sense, yet also remains rather undeveloped. It seems it was a choice that simply made sense considering his circumstances and isn't really an integral part of who he is as a character really, but it's hard not to enjoy his scenes with Gaskin a lot. I'd also like to add that the fact he's friends with Johnny is really cute. From their interactions, it's pretty obvious they're close buddies, and it makes total sense that Johnny would be bros with a kid. The animation, once again, no complaints, is very well done. It's beautiful and there's still killer vocal performances. Truly the biggest problem is this story doesn't even have to be about Denzel. Any random OC kid could have filled the role and it would have the exact same impact. It just made sense to use Denzel at the end of the day, and that is what it is. Aside from that, I'm not sure I can read much deeper into this without just ranting about Denzel existing. Episode Denzel is a nice addition to the lore of 7, but leaves me conflicted overall as it does miss the mark on Denzel himself a little. If you're a fan of 7, I'd also recommend giving this a watch. I wouldn't go in expecting your feelings on Denzel to undergo any radical changes. So there you have it, my coverage on the few morsels of 7 anime content we have been graced with. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're interested, absolutely give these a watch. They're a treat for any 7 fan. If you liked this video, please drop a like, comment, or even subscribe. If you didn't, feel free to drop some criticism down in the comments. Any interactions on my videos are greatly appreciated. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta get back to playing Crisis Core Reunion on my PlayStation 5. Until next time, I'm Ghoul. Thanks for watching. Love ya. Mwah.